The Betsy Ross flag is an early design of the flag of the United States, popularly, but very likely incorrectly, attributed to Betsy Ross, using the common motifs of alternating red and white striped field with 5 pointed stars in a blue canton. The first documented usage of this flag was in 1792. The flag features 13 stars to represent the original 13 colonies with the stars arranged in a circle. Although this early version of an American flag is now commonly called the Betsy Ross flag, the claim by her descendants that Betsy Ross contributed to this design is not accepted by modern American scholars and vexillologists. The National Museum of American History notes that the story first entered into American consciousness about the time of the 1876 Centennial Exposition celebrations. In 1870, Ross's grandson, William J. Canby, presented a paper to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in which he claimed that his grandmother had made with her hands the first flag of the United States. Canby said he first obtained this information from his Aunt Clarissa Sidney Claypool Wilson in 1857, 20 years after Betsy Ross's death. Canby dates the historic episode based on Washington's journey to Philadelphia in late spring 1776, a year before Congress passed the Flag Act. In the 2008 book The Star-Spangled Banner, The Making of an American Icon, Smithsonian experts point out that Canby's recounting of the event appealed to Americans eager for stories about the Revolution and its heroes and heroines. Betsy Ross was promoted as a patriotic role model for young girls and a symbol of women's contributions to American history. Historian Laurel Thatcher Ulrich further explored this line of inquiry in a 2007 article, How Betsy Ross Became Famous, Oral Tradition, Nationalism, and the Invention of History. Ross biographer Marla Miller points out, however, that even if one accepts Canby's presentation, Betsy Ross was merely one of several flag makers in Philadelphia, and her only contribution to the design was to change the 6-pointed stars to the easier 5-pointed stars. According to the traditional account, the original flag was made in June 1776, when a small committee, including George Washington, Robert Morris and relative George Ross, visited Betsy and discussed the need for a new American flag. Betsy accepted the job to manufacture the flag, altering the committee's design by replacing the 6-pointed stars with 5-pointed stars. Betsy Ross's story was published in 1870, 34 years after her death, by her only surviving grandson, William J. Canby, in a paper presented to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. The paper included stories he had heard from family members throughout the years. According to Canby's paper, sitting sewing in her shop one day with her girls around her, several gentlemen entered. She recognized one of these as the uncle of her deceased husband, Col. George Ross, a delegate from Pennsylvania to Congress. She also knew the handsome form and features of the dignified, yet graceful and polite commander-in-chief, who, while he was yet Colonel Washington, had visited her shop both professionally and socially many times, a friendship caused by her connection with the Ross family. They announced themselves as a committee of Congress, and stated that they had been appointed to prepare a flag, and asked her if she thought she could make one, to which she replied, with her usual modesty and self-reliance, that she did not know but she could try. She had never made one, but if the pattern were shown to her she had not doubt of her ability to do it. The committee were shown into her back parlor, the room back of the shop, and Col. Ross produced a drawing, roughly made, of the proposed flag. It was defective to the clever eye of Mrs. Ross and unsymmetrical, and she offered suggestions which Washington and the committee readily approved. What all these suggestions were we cannot definitely determine, but they were of sufficient importance to involve an alteration and redrawing of the design, which was then and there done by Colonel, General, George Washington, in pencil, in her back parlor. One of the alterations had reference to the shape of the stars. In the drawing they were made with 6 points. Mrs. Ross at once said that this was wrong, the stars should be 5-pointed. They were aware of that, but thought there would be some difficulty in making a 5-pointed star. Nothing easier was her prompt reply, and folding a piece of paper in the proper manner, with one clip of her ready scissors she quickly displayed to their astonished vision the 5-pointed star, which accordingly took its place in the national standard. General Washington was the active one in making the design, the others having little or nothing to do with it. When it was completed, it was given to William Barrett, painter, to paint. The gentleman drew out of a chest an old ship's color, which he loaned her to show her how the sewing was done, and also the drawing painted by Barrett. Other designs had been prepared by the committee, and 1 or 2 of them were placed in the hands of other seamstresses to be made. Betsy Ross went diligently to work upon her flag, carefully examining the peculiar stitch in the old ship's color, which had been given her as a specimen, and recognizing, with the eye of a good mechanic, its important characteristics, strength and elasticity. The flag was soon finished, and Betsy returned it, the first star-spangled banner that ever floated upon the breeze, to her employer. It was run up to the peak of one of his ships lying at the wharf, and received the unanimous approval of the committee and of a little group of bystanders looking on, and the same day was carried into the State House and laid before Congress, with a report from the committee. The next day Ross called upon Betsy, and informed her that her work had been approved and her flag adopted, and he now requested her to turn her whole attention to the manufacture of flags, and gave her an unlimited order for as many as she could make. Mrs. Ross was now effectively set up in the business of flag and color making for the government, through all her after life, which was a long, useful and eventful one. She never knew what it was, to use her own expression, to want employment, this business, flag making for the government, remaining with her and in her family for many years.